If you watched my last video, you know that I put a new code editor, or at least new to me, to the test. This editor is Windsurf by Codium. Windsurf offers an agentic experience to create what they call flows, workflows that make creating and editing applications smoother than anything I have ever experienced. How do they do it? By employing an agent called Cascade. Among other powerful features, this agent has full context awareness, allowing you to run it in existing code bases without the need to constantly provide it with files, sites, images, or other contextual prompt artifacts. I was so excited by the results that I pretty much declared Windsurf as my new editor of choice, replacing Cursor AI, the editor I have been enjoying for the last few months. However, unbeknownst to me, the Cursor team was not sitting on their hands, and the day after I recorded my Windsurf video, released a new version of Cursor AI with, you guessed it, agentic features incorporated into their composer that are similar to those found in Windsurf Cascade. I immediately sat down and used the same prompt I used with Windsurf to create a fairly sophisticated investment tracking application. How did it compare? Well, that's exactly what I am going to demonstrate in this video. So get ready for
the Battle of the Ages.
Or the agents, at least. Using this prompt, I was able to create an application that allows its users to create portfolios of investments and add investments transactions to allow for monitoring and charting their performance. This application supports dark mode, is responsive, and built using Ruby on Rails 8 and the latest technology, including Hotwire and Stimulus. The version you are seeing here is the version I built in a few hours using the new Cursor Composer agent. This includes time for debugging, generating code, and iterating on design and enhancements. For design, I am using Flowbyte components and Tailwind CSS. Some of the standout features of the application include charts generated through Chart.js and notes that allow for automatic saves and drafts. As you can see, the application also has light and dark theme support and leverages responsive design. For the remainder of the video, I will be doing a side-by-side comparison of both tools as they accomplish a very similar result. You will get to see each of them in action as I demonstrate and discuss the flows and give you my opinion on what I like about each. If you watch some of my other videos, then you know the first thing I usually like to do is ask the AI what it knows about the project that I'm working on. In the past, I have always put the requirement specification and allowed cursor rules to be in the context before asking the question to give hints to the AI. With the agentic versions, I didn't put anything in the context and let the AI discover the file system for itself. In both cases, it did a great job. As you see here, I am now pasting the requirements document into Windsurf to see what it can do. It immediately starts generating the scripts to generate our models and our migrations. As you can see in the diagram, it allows you to accept the changes, and it actually runs the command in the terminal within its own process. Other tools and past versions of these tools used to integrate nicely with the terminal, but having the terminal within the AI process makes this workflow a lot smoother and allows it to detect errors and correct errors without intervention. Windsurf is now done generating our models and controllers. Now we're going to move over to Cursor. After choosing Agent in the bottom right-hand corner, we now paste the same requirement specification into the chat window and let Cursor get underway. Cursor also starts the process off by generating and running migration and model generate scripts. While they behave in almost the same way, you're going to notice right away a few differences in the look and feel between the two different products. Both products allow you to review and accept all of the files that are changed one by one or all at once. Let's check in on Windsurf. Now that all of the models are created, Windsurf is going to create all of the relationships and validations for the models. If my cursor gives off the appearance that I'm confused, it's because I am. I see this blue toolbar pop up here that allows me to do various things like accept the changes, reject the changes, navigate between the changes, and navigate up and down between the differences in the file. You'll see that pop up, and you'll see me using that throughout the rest of the video. One feature that I wish Windsurf offered is the ability to see which files have had their changes applied. It would be nice if the little green circle on the left-hand side was red until it was applied, or some other color. For now, I just keep my eye out for the Accept All button at the bottom. If all of the changes have been applied, then it will go away. Perhaps there's a better way to do this, and I'm just not aware of it since it's the first time I've used Windsurf. If somebody knows, please put a comment in and share it with the community. As you can see, Windsurf is now making some modifications to the migrations based on its new code that it's generated. I just now noticed that the green light is actually yellow while that change is being made to the file, so they are really just one color away from implementing that desired feature. One of the main differences between the two workflows is you can see here that in order to view the file diff, it has an open diff button, and you view it in the editor, and again use that blue toolbar to navigate between things and to accept or reject. Once we check back in with Cursor, you're going to notice that it handles diffs in a different way. Windsurf is done making changes to the migrations, and now it's going to ask us if we want to run the migrate command. Success! Windsurf will now print out a summary of everything that it just did. Let's check back in on Cursor. Cursor is just finishing up creating the models and the migrations, and now it's going to move forward and create relationships on those models and the validations. That sounds familiar. As you can see, diffs in Cursor are inline in the chat window as opposed to in the editor. I personally think this flow is a little bit better, but neither one of them are bad, and I think it's going to come down to personal preference. Notice the green check mark on the upper left-hand side of the diff card. This indicates that the changes for that file have been applied. Cursor is now making another pass through the migrations to ensure that everything is correct. And finally, it's going to ask us if we want to run them. Success, and here comes our summary. Let's see what Windsurf is up to. It looks like Cascade is ready to create our controllers and views. You'll notice the skip routes argument on the controller generation script. Both Windsurf and Cursor did a good job of understanding that we are working on a hotwire and stimulus application, and therefore there may not be the traditional routing that you would see otherwise. In the case of transactions, it's also skipping the template engine. Pretty cool, right? And finally, it's going to make the appropriate modifications to the routes file. And what is Cursor Composer up to? You may have guessed this, but it is ready to create our controllers and routes. You'll notice it gives us the next 4 steps that it plans to implement. And now, Cursor will modify the routes file. Meanwhile, Cascade is adding the authentication requirements to our controllers. And now it's creating our flow byte navigation bar and theme controller. And now it will summarize everything it did in this pass. Meanwhile, Cursor is, you guessed it, adding authentication to our application controller, and generating new controllers and views. Now it will summarize the work it's done on controllers and basic views and move on to setting up and configuring turbo frames and streams and creating Flowbyte components. Composer did a great job of making use of stimulus to handle client-side interactions, including those coming from Flowbyte components. It created a theme controller and a modal dialog controller, among others. It also made good use of turbo frames and turbo streams to morph our pages, including adding elements to tables, removing elements from tables, and rendering our modal dialogs. And now we have another work summary. Cursor now has the ability to use file linting in order to discover errors and attempt to fix them. This is what it's doing now. Based on the linting, it thinks there's a problem with one of the stimulus controllers. There actually isn't, though, and this is kind of a problem that I found with the linting system. If the linter isn't picking up things correctly, then Cursor will try to compensate for that with code changes. Well, this is a really cool and powerful feature. You'll notice later in the video I actually end up disabling it. I hope to be able to fix the linting problems within stimulus controllers and maybe enable it again. Checking back in on Windsurf Cascade, we can see that it is also making use of stimulus controllers to handle theme changing and portfolio selectors with our dropdown. And now it's going to review all of the files and start working on some more of our views. I hope you're starting to see the power of these agents. I know I am. It used to be that you would just basically feed the AI some context and then prompt it on a regular basis. While the developer is still in the driver's seat, these agents are now taking on more of the coding responsibility and they have more awareness than they ever have. And now we'll get a final summary of all of the work Cascade has done in a single prompt. At this point, I actually started the application and started going through the process of debugging some of the issues that it came up with, and there were definitely bugs, and also making enhancements after using it to improve the user experience. If you're interested, I suggest you check out my Windsurf video where I go into a lot more detail about this project. Back in Cursor, we're at a stopping point where it's asking us how we'd like to proceed. I'm going to leave it up to Cursor to decide, and I'm just going to say, yes, please continue. Once again, it's found some linting errors, and it's going to attempt to fix those, and then it's going to continue to create some more views. Once again, we have a summary of its work, and it's on to the next step. Back in Windsurf, I'll demonstrate a little bit of the debugging process that you run into. With every one of these generators that I've used, there's always bugs that need to be worked out. But with a little bit of patience, you find yourself working through them pretty quickly. On both of these projects, I actually did most of the bug fixing myself so that I could learn the code a little bit better. But this is an example of how you can copy and paste the error into the AI tool and let it try to debug it for you. In Composer, you can actually paste a screenshot into the context and it will help you fix it, but I haven't figured out how to do that in Windsurf. If you know, please leave a comment below. Back in Cursor, we now have our investment views and it's moving on to the transaction views. And now it's going to generate our analytics charts. In Rails 8, all of the stimulus controllers are automatically registered, but here is Composer again thinking it needs to register each of these controllers individually. I end up cleaning up this code. I think this has to do with the linting that I talked about earlier. Composer is going to use a couple of JavaScript libraries to generate our analytics charts. One of them is Chart.js. The only problem is it doesn't realize, or it forgot, that we're not using NPM packaging. So I had to remind it that we're using import maps. But you can see here, once I reminded it, it did the right thing, and it's now creating the proper pins for import maps. It is also pinning another GitHub project called Kirkle Color, which I've never used. And now we have another summary, with this next step being to add the ability to export transactions in JSON or CSV. And we get another summary, with the final step being adding auto-saving drafts for notes. Okay, it is done creating that feature, and now we get another summary indicating the 3 major features that it just finished in that last step. It has found some additional issues, and it's going to look into fixing them. I received this failed issue a few times when generating this application, but the good news is when I click the try again button, it seems to pick up exactly where it left off. Now Composer gives us a final summary. One thing that I like to do at the end of a project like this is to ask it to give me a summary of all of the features that it implemented, and that's what it's doing now. And it did a pretty good job, gave me a nice markdown document, and it gives me an idea of what it is that I need to write tests for and to test. This final session consists of Cursor autonomously deciding that it needs to check over the code one more time and finding the same linting errors and attempting to fix them again. I am, of course, not accepting these changes, and in fact, here in a second, you'll see I actually go to the cursor setting and turn off the linting feature. And here are the rough but functional results of the work we did. This is the Windsurf version of the application you can see here. Again, you can see that it features the FlowByte components, as does the cursor version of it. Overall, I want to give you my feedback on how this experience went for me. Both Windsurf and Cursor are very capable IDEs. I like both of them, and I think they're more powerful than I ever imagined tools would be this early in the AI game. I think there's a lot more coming. There are changes in this industry every single day. I would be happy using either of these tools, and they're both based on VS Code, so you can use all of the extensions that you're used to using and you're comfortable with. The advantages that go to Cursor are the ability to make use of models from services like OpenRouter, which I think is pretty cool, and maybe you can do this in Windsurf. I wasn't able to find a way to do that. Second advantage would be that I like the diffs that are actually in the Composer window as opposed to going outside to the editor. And I like the green check mark that shows you which files have had their changes applied. The advantages of the Go to Windsurf are it has a very polished feeling UI, and also it's only $10 per month, so that's half the price of Cursor. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel. If you know something that I don't know about Windsurf, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.